Hey everybody, Ty Brand, Climate High Tree Experts. I just wanted to explain a cool job that we did and give you the opportunity to kind of see an insider's look of some advanced rigging that we do and explain why we do it certain ways and how, as arborists, we look at certain situations through risk assessment based on kind of how we know that the tree's going to react and or interact with the loads that we put on it. Especially if like a branch was to break but not completely dislodge itself and it's still hanging there under tension, then we have to kind of be able to calculate within reason that load and be able to compensate for it through our rigging, especially if there's a high value target below it, or if it was to fail or fall after we cut it and get stuck. There's a lot of pre-planning that goes into that. And so this was just a fun job that we did where we did some advanced rigging on it and it worked out really well. And I just thought this would be a cool opportunity to show you. This was in Cornville down by the creek. And luckily we had a lot of big, strong trees around this limb that had cracked in a storm, and it was a pretty major trunk that had tore out but not completely tore off and was hanging over a person's property where if this had completely failed, it would have hit a fence and some kayaks and a metal rack that our client had built for his boats. So rather than taking the fence out and moving the rack and moving all the kayaks, we just relied on our rigging skills to kind of float this limb into the space that we needed it to land in. And so that's kind of what this video is. And as we go through it, I'll explain kind of what you're looking at because some of it might not make immediate sense. So I just wanted to show you. So we're going to start off with a shot where what you're looking at is a pre-tensioning system that we built. It's a 3-to-1 mechanical advantage. So our main load strand, our big strong rigging rope, is going from the ground where we are through the 3-to-1 mechanical advantage all the way up probably 50 or so feet up into a sycamore, which is going through a false crotch or a pulley. Rather than just over a limb, we put it through a piece of hardware and then back down to the center, or where we think the center of gravity is on the limb that we're rigging out. And so we pre-tensioned this with the 3-to-1 mechanical advantage. Basically what we did was run the rope, the directions that it needed to go, and routed it correctly. And then we built the 3-to-1 mechanical advantage off of the hitch of my truck with a secondary rope and a progress capture. So we were able to run that progress capture up the rigging rope. And then with the 3-to-1 mechanical advantage, that's giving us the strength, 3 times our strength, to be able to pull tension into that line. And then we were able to capture that progress through something called a porta-wrap, which is basically just a friction device where you wrap the rope around it a lot, and then you're able to lock it off. And so any force that is now put onto that device is locked into place, but because it's wrapped so many times, it's not so tight that you can't get it unlocked and be able to use it. And so the advantage of using a porta-wrap is that it's controlled friction. So you can lower really heavy things, limbs or rigging gear or really whatever you need through friction in a really controlled way. So the first shot that you're going to see is that 3-to-1 mechanical advantage system coming from the top of that sycamore down to the base of another ash, which is going through a system that we built off the hitch of my truck. And then you'll see Paul sitting there, and you'll see me setting up that progress that we captured with that system in that porta wrap and locking it off. And so as we go through this, I'll kind of narrate what you're seeing, just because it won't probably make too much sense if I didn't. So right now you can kind of see how we built that system. I don't really have to go into too much depth about how it all works, other than we just built that system so that we could pre-tension that line to kind of take some of the weight of that limb into our system rather than just cutting it free. And so we progress capture. You can see here that I've wrapped that rope around this porta wrap several times, and then you can do some half hitches on those pegs at the end, which basically locks it. So once we pre-tension it and we lock it, it's holding that weight. It's not gonna move, it's not gonna budge, no matter what, unless the rope broke. But in this case, we knew the rope wouldn't. It would easily hold the weight of the limb that we were trying to float. So you can see that that's the first step. And then we also have a line at the base of the tree, like to my far left. That's the back of me that you're looking at. And if you look up to the left, you can see Marley. He's the climber in the tree. That trunk that's vertical left of him, we did another porta wrap. It's the same system, that friction device that I used previous. And we ran it up that trunk higher than the limb that he is on. And you can kind of see that limb that he's like midline to his body goes out to the right and then down to the ground. That's the limb that we're rigging out. So above his head is another false crotch. It's a rigging ring. And so it's called a butt tie. So we tied the butt of that limb up high, but pretty close to it, so we could control it from going too far in any one direction, and also control it from the butt falling too far down once he releases it with his chainsaw. If you look closely, right about above my head, where those limbs start to come down, you can see that there's another rope going out to my trailer, which is attached to a winch. So the idea here is that we pre-tension all of these systems. And so when Marley's able to cut that limb, the limb kind of just falls into our system. And then now we have full control of it. And one thing that we did that was pretty cool is we noticed the fibers of the limb that he was going to cut were kind of twisted. So we loaded that limb with our rope in the opposite direction to correct, because it would want to turn as we released it. It would want to spin on itself. So we put our rope and tightened it in the direction to correct that, basically. And so it fell far enough that the tip of that limb is now on the ground. And so I have to come cut it so that we actually have it in the air. So we're actually floating that limb once he makes his cut. And so this takes a lot of communication. Everybody knows their role. I'm the primary communicator in this. So you can see Paul there to my left. He's also holding what we call the butt tie, which is right where Marley is. There's a rope going above his head, controlling the butt. And then Serena, all the way over to the right, is operating the winch, which we've pre-tensioned pretty hard to be pulling it towards that fence line, because we don't want it to go backwards. If you look directly above my head, there is a trunk that goes up a ways past the limb that Marley's cutting and then goes to a Y. What we want to avoid is the limb that we're trying to rig out. We don't want that to fall down into that big union and get stuck. So we put a good amount of tension on that winch even before he made his cut. We were monitoring the cut while we were tensioning it, but because as soon as he releases it, we don't want it to go backwards or in the wrong direction. And so you can see that he's getting ready, he's making his cut, and right there, it fell down into our system. So now we have full control of that limb. And you can start to see, this is from his perspective now. We're able to move that. Right now, the winch is pulling while Paul, with the butt tie, is lowering from his side. And I am very, very slowly lowering from my side as well, because we want the direction to be going straight towards that trailer. And periodically I'll go in and cut the tips back as far as I can reach off so we don't run into the fence. But this is all working in unison. This is 3 different rigging lines working all this at the same time and simultaneously. And it's so great communication is key here, because if any one person tensioned too much or not enough, then the system could fail or we could injure this tree more than necessary. And so here we jump back to my point of view, where now we are literally floating that limb in space with our rigging lines. And we're floating it as close to that fence as we need to, just to clear that trunk where I was explaining we didn't want it to get stuck. There it cleared. Now I'm able to lower it with the device I showed you in the beginning of the video, while Paul also lowers, and then Serena pulls till I tell her to stop, and then we just lower it to the ground. So that right there is probably not the easiest thing to wrap your head around, but I would say that's pretty moderate, maybe a little advanced as far as rigging goes. And this was just a cool opportunity to show you kind of how we think and the situations that we put ourselves in for our clients, and how we exercise the knowledge that we have to make sure that we have control. I mean, this limb probably weighed, anywhere from 1,200 to 2,000 pounds, maybe more. And so complete failure of that would do pretty catastrophic damage to anything that it landed on. And we could also have made that problem much worse if we had allowed it to fall down below Marley's feet and get stuck, because now we're going to have to tear up the tree just to get it out of there. We wanted to avoid that. So with the tools that we had available, which luckily that winch in my trailer really helped us a lot, and then the different tricks that we have with rigging, and luckily having pretty strong trees with high points to rig off of, we were able to control this whole system in confidence and in a safe way for this client. And we didn't have to move anything. Once it was on the ground, we just bucked it up, and it really wasn't that big of a deal. But you could see how something like this could be a big deal. I mean, especially as a homeowner, you come and see that and you have no idea how you're going to get that down without being one of those, fail videos you see on YouTube. This is one way that it could be done safely, and this is how we chose to do it. And so I just wanted to share that with you. I think it was pretty cool. It's not the best like close-up footage, but I think you get kind of the idea. And yeah, so this is just a day in the life of what we do, and I just wanted you to see from our perspective how that kind of looks and be able to explain it to you. So yeah, thanks for taking the time to watch this video. I really appreciate it. Until next time.